Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick and welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She is a woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her Conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. My guest this week is transformational healer and multidimensional mentor Adalina East. By connecting with higher guides, she helps her clients experience massive and often immediate shifts in their life. I can personally testify to her work and the changes that were created for me the instant I ended my first call with her. During this episode, I'll go into much more details about my healing session with Adalina. She also shares her story of recovering from debilitating illness, and also we've got an extra special gift from her guides, and it's an activation that is specifically for people who live in the city. So as always, I begin each episode by asking my guests, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel at your most HER?
I feel at my most HER when I am talking to God or universe or consciousness, whatever label you want to put on it. So I feel that I'm at my highest possible resonance when I'm able to just close my eyes, be alone, tap in, and feel spirit moving through me and really be able to have a conversation, a two-way conversation. That's when I'm at my highest energetic resonance. And if I can be in nature while I'm doing it, even better.
So good. Thank you very much. And I just want you to talk a little bit about your story. If you can explain where you came from, like how your life has brought you into doing the work that you do today.
Yes, I would love to. So I was raised by musician parents. My father is an opera singer and my mom was one of the first female principal French horn players in the world. And so there were very lean times, and there were times when we were not on quite secure ground, but it was definitely an interesting upbringing. And my grandmother on my dad's side is Native American. Mm-hmm. And I remember our trips, mostly when we were young, were to go and visit family. So we went to go visit her in Montana. She had a place there. And I remember walking around with her and just kind of watching her. When you're a child, you're watching the modeling that comes out of your parents or other caretakers and just kind of absorbing the way she interacted with everything around her. And she was always speaking to her spirit guides and, relishing in the beauty of this nature that surrounded us when we were in Montana. And I remember her teaching me how to speak to things, teaching me how to speak to my own spirit guides and the herbs and the plants that we would find, and feeling just so good when I was in that space. And then things took an abrupt shift in my family, and my family joined the Christian church, and my mom became a born-again Christian. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's there are, of course, variations on the theme, but for me anyway, it meant church every Sunday, Sunday school, youth group at least 3 or 4 times a week. And it was a very devout practice that was based on hard and fast rules. And, me, myself, not such a rule follower. This didn't work so well for me. And I learned very early on that speaking to my spirit guides and sort of communing with nature in this way was not acceptable. It was not biblical. There was nothing in the Bible about speaking to your spirit guides. It was worshiping false idols and all of these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So I kind of trained myself out of it and really turned my back on that side of my own intuition and my own spiritual gifts. And I think we all have spiritual gifts and very diverse and amazing spiritual gifts. And when we are told that we have to kind of turn our backs on that and we take that in, it does something to the soul. You know, it really can kind of crush the soul. So advancing here to later in life, I ended up at a Kundalini yoga class when I lived in Bangladesh. I had joined the UN after a career in film production. And I had loved working in film production. There was nothing wrong with it. It just became really hard on the body and hard on the hours. You start the week very early and you end the week extremely late. So by Friday night, you're working all night. And by the time I was 28 or 29, I decided that I really wanted to serve. I knew that I'd been put on this planet to serve in some way, and I was trying to figure that out. So I had a very supportive boss in film production at that time, and he, you know, sent me to Burma, and I got to experience that culture and experience what Burma was back then, which was very different than it is now, of course. And I ended up getting a job working for the UN, not in Burma, but moving on to Timor-Leste. It's a very small country in between Indonesia and Australia. Mm-hmm. And I really love that place. It's still what I call my soul home. And I met incredible people there, and I had incredible experiences and moved on to Bangladesh. And when I was working in Bangladesh, I went to my first Kundalini yoga class. And I remember hearing voices speaking to me. And I was looking around the class and looking at everyone, and they were chanting a mantra. And I was hearing different words than the mantra. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening to me right now? But, well, maybe I just drank too much last night. I mean, there was a lot of wine, you know, maybe it's because I didn't drink enough coffee today. I came up with a bunch of different excuses for why this was happening. And continued the class and became very passionate about Kundalini yoga, which I know you also practice. And then we moved on to, after living in Bangladesh for a time, I moved back to New York City. I had lived in New York City for most of my adult life, and I was 35 at this point and ready to work at UN headquarters. I felt like I was ready to marry the person that I was dating, and we were talking about having children and these kinds of things. And so when I got back to New York City, I really fell out of my Kundalini yoga practice. I fell out of any form of self-care whatsoever. I ended up joining the communications team at UN Women. And it was a great team. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just not for me. Mm-hmm. And most of the work that I'd done in Timor-Leste and in Bangladesh was more in terms of social work. Like, I'm a social worker. I worked with survivors of domestic violence, and I worked with their children, and really loved that kind of work and was very passionate about the one-on-one interactions and getting to see the change, getting to see things move forward and get better for people, and getting to help other women start their own businesses so that they could achieve financial stability separate from their partner and be able to move on and not have to live in an abusive situation anymore and be able to support their kids on their own. And so when I began working for the communications section at UN Women, I started out writing for their website, which I enjoyed. At least it was still creative, and I got to still see somewhat of an impact. But I had the sense that it was not for me. And because I'd sort of lost touch with myself, and I'd lost touch with my Kundalini yoga and any forms of self-care that I'd been practicing beforehand, my health really deteriorated quickly. And at a certain point, I remember going to it was like a business retreat kind of thing where we would plan the following year, and I was typing a lot and taking a lot of notes. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why am I doing this? I'm an intelligent person. I speak 5 languages and I've done all this amazing work. You know, my ego got very flared up there. I'm just way too important to be taking these notes. And I remember getting quite huffy about it. On the inside, of course, I said nothing because I am a diplomat to the core, which I'm still retraining myself out of. And the next morning I woke up and my wrists were just killing me. I could not hardly move them. And I went to a couple of doctors and they thought it was probably tendonitis from all the typing the day before. And that didn't really resonate with me, but I thought, okay, whatever. And I let my boss know and went out on a 6-week medical leave. And as that leave went on, I got worse and worse. Slowly I stopped being able to bend my elbows. And my husband was very helpful. He was, taking on work assignments, and I'd be like dictating things to him at home, and he was helping as much as he could. And the a couple of months passed, and I wasn't getting better. And then I woke up one morning and I couldn't walk.
Wow.
I just couldn't move my feet. It felt like my whole lower half was numb. And then when I would get up to start to try to walk, my feet hurt so much that I could barely take a step. And this started a very downhill phase of life of multiple doctors. So forgetting all of my herbal healing training from my grandmother as a child, I went through the Western medicine loophole. So I saw 2 or 3 doctors a day for a period of months. And racked up a lot of medical debt during this time also. And no one could really figure it out. I could sometimes move my legs and walk forward, but it was so painful that I chose not to do it. And then there were some days where I actually couldn't walk. And then there were some days where I couldn't move my face, and some days where I couldn't move my arms. And it was always a rotating debacle of pain and inability to move. It was terrifying. And so I remember lying in my bed and just being like, I have no idea what's going on. I've not talked to God in years, but I will give it a try. And my mother was on the phone with me at the time, and she prayed with me. And I fell asleep. The next day I was going through different things on my phone, and suddenly an ad popped up for Kundalini Yoga Park Slope, which is this beautiful yoga studio in Brooklyn, in New York. And I just thought, well, I have nothing to lose. So I got into my wheelchair. I'd been in a wheelchair for several months at this point, and I powered the wheelchair over to this yoga studio and had a beautiful class and had a wonderful conversation with the owner of the yoga studio, Guru Surya, afterwards. And she had some ideas about my health. And I remember explaining to her, I've seen every doctor in New York. I've even seen the greatest ones. I've seen the ones that don't take insurance, the ones that can diagnose anything. I've seen everyone. Like, I don't want to live in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I really don't know what to do. And she had me put my feet up on the gong, and she gonged my feet for about an hour. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I felt the vibrations going through my feet. I felt some of the pain starting to release already. And this was the beginning of my healing journey. And so I gradually started to let go of all the diagnoses that had come up so far. Like, I'd had doctors tell me I had MS, which none of my blood work worked out to look like that. And the neurological tests didn't look like that. But there were times when I couldn't remember anything. There were times when my husband had to feed me because I couldn't move parts of my body. So there was a lot of dropping of diagnoses during this time. So I dropped the MS diagnosis, the rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, and all of these other things. I just dropped every diagnosis that Western medicine had come up with so far, and started to slowly rebuild. And through this time, I started working with a really talented herbalist and started to remember some of the herbal medicine skills that I'd gained as a child from my grandmother. And something about dropping back into this place of trust, of trusting this herbalist to work with me, trusting him with my body, and trusting that this was going to work, that this was going to help me get better. It really opened up my spiritual gifts again. And so I started to hear voices again and tried my very best to not be afraid. And And my health improved gradually. And eventually we were able to, my husband and I were willing to take a trip to see his family. His family is in Germany, and he's German. So we decided to book in a side trip to Amsterdam to see my best friend around this same time. And she is my soulmate still to this very day. We met in Timor-Leste and we're very fast friends. And I was so excited to see her. And I was so excited that my husband had the idea to make a stop in Amsterdam so that I could spend a few days with her. And we had a beautiful time. And then spent time with his family. And I ended up in Austria having an emergency medical procedure done, which was unrelated to the previous things. I was up and walking at this point and deeply ingrained in my Kundalini practice and feeling pretty good most of the time. But during this medical procedure, my best friend was on WhatsApp with me the whole time. And she said, that Kundalini yoga training that you've been wanting to take, the teacher training, I think you should do it. I don't think you should wait for your job at the UN to end. My job was scheduled to end in April of the following year. She said, I really think you should just do it now. I don't know what you're waiting for. And then she died. She took a trip to Timor-Leste, our favorite place, and a tree randomly fell and hit her. She was driving with her partner and some friends of ours, and a tree hit the top of the car and killed her instantly.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I think we made this plan together before we came back into this incarnation, honestly, because it really was such a wake-up call. And I still feel very grateful that I got to have 8 years with my soulmate. How many people get 8 years with their soulmate? It's a rare thing. And we got to live together most of that time too, which was even better. So I ended up going deeper and really thinking about why this could possibly be happening. Like, how much can one person take was honestly my first thought.
Yeah.
But of course, realizing, like, for God's sake, there are people in the world who are starving, who don't have enough food to eat. There are people in the world and you've worked with many people in the world, and you know what's actually the reality for the majority of people out there. So pull on your big girl pants and let's go. So I decided to enroll in the Kundalini Yoga teacher training. And I'm so very happy that I did, because I met great teachers there. And the voices that I was hearing were my spirit guides. And I met one of my best friends and teachers, Carolyn Burrell, on the first day of teacher training. And with her help, I ended up being able to tap into my spiritual gifts again and learn so much more about how to connect to the spirit world and the proper boundaries to set up to do this. And also learned how to channel my energies for healing for myself and for other people. It's been an incredible several years. It's only been 5 years. I can't even believe it. Yeah, about 5 years.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. There's just like so much in that story, that from going to a point of where your health is failing you. And that's, one thing that I don't have any experience of personally. I've seen other people around me have health issues and long-term health issues. I've always been the healthy one.
Good.
So it's only when I realized, because I take all these things for granted. And even when you were speaking, you were saying I had to rely on this person and that person. I'm like, do you know what? I am really lucky. I've never had any issue health-wise, the odd bit of flu and things like that, but nothing that's ever really taken me out. So just your story has given me a moment of just be thankful for my own health. But then when you get placed in a place where you feel that everything is lost, and then you start to kind of pull different things, and it gives you space for other things, I suppose. Like you say, the Kundalini yoga came onto your phone, and it's all of these things that just start to happen when you make space for it, and the messages come through, and then you went there and you put your feet on the gong and had like a gong session. And I can just imagine what that would have been like. It's I wrote down when you were writing that music therapy, and that's something I've always been fascinated by as a musician, music therapy as a therapy in itself. And one of the times I was investigating a school in London to go to, and they were showing us all these tapes, and it was the Nordoff Robbins. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Yeah. So I went to the Nordoff Robbins school, and they were kind of showing us around. They've got this amazing complex in North London, just built specifically for music therapy. And they've got all the tapes from, even before there was video, it was reel to reel. They've taped and recorded literally every session. But one of the things that really struck me was when they were working with a child who just, he never walked, he never moved. And so he didn't, and it never occurred to me until they put it down to the fact that he had no experience of the vibrations of movement through his legs that we just take for granted because we we step and there's like a feedback of the ground that happens, but he had nothing of that. And so they'd put his feet on the drum and just start to really just, the timpani, and just start to very gently tap on the timpani, and the vibrations would start to wake up something with him. By the time you've watched, they'd kind of cut through a few different series of his treatment over the course of months. You're in tears at the end of it. You're like, where do I sign up? Where do you, can you imagine, it's like this little boy who just never walked and never felt the resonance of the ground in him, and then you just see over time, and eventually he's on the drum and he's just like hungry for the vibration. So I get that when you were saying that about the gong, and then of course with it being the gong, that's just an extra level of vibration.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. And that's actually my favorite thing about teaching Kundalini yoga is playing the gong.
And how did you go through with the teacher training? How did you come to do your gong training?
So I actually thought that the gong training would be included with the teacher training, but it was not. And we were all really surprised by that. So some of the teachers from our teacher training put together a workshop, like a 3 or 4 hour workshop. And we learned in that workshop the chakra system of the gong, which is beautiful and amazing. And we also learned kind of Yogi Bhajan's techniques with the gong. And it's actually something that I'm using in my work now as well, because as a healer, I use whatever comes to me at the time. So sometimes my spirit guides will show me a person that person used to know that has passed away that wants to bring forth a message. Or sometimes they'll show me messages from archangels or from extraterrestrials or different sources. But sometimes the message is very clearly musical. And so I'll either hum tones or sing tones, or I'll use the gong to bring forth that message. And I think it's so important. It's really important to be open to spirit in whatever way it's coming through you. If it's coming through you as music, use music. If it's tones, use tones. Use whatever spirit is bringing to you, because there's always a reason, I think, for this.
Wow. So good. Yeah. And you talk about working with the spirit guides or the extraterrestrials or angels or whoever's coming through for that person when they're having a healing session with you. And I've been lucky enough to actually you did a small one and a longer one with me, have a healing session with you, and talking from my experience, even after the first one. And just to elaborate a little bit, the thing that I wanted to work on was really work on nailing what I feel are blocks that I have around abundance, and just trying to find out where that's coming from. And if anyone's kind of listened to maybe like 2 episodes back when I was talking about an experience where I had a meeting with someone and it kind of became like a racial event, which it seemed even, it seemed like it just came out of nowhere, but putting all the steps together, just say like I'd done a mini session, and then the minute I'd like pressed my phone to end the Zoom call, an email came through that was talking about, and it was this person that wanted to meet me with a view of having me do some work for them. And then it kind of went into us meeting, and then it kind of brought up all of these race issues as well. So I won't really go into that here, but it ties in that it was really, it was something to do with affecting my abundance. Obviously, it's like an income stream. And because it happened just like, you know, like you were saying that you were on the phone and the Kundalini ad came up, I closed the call to you just after this session, and then an opportunity for me to earn money came, but it just kind of went awry because there was still an underlying layer of worthiness, feeling worthy or not feeling worthy, that was tied to race, you know. And when I kind of like came out of it, because it put me in a spin for a week or so, the whole thing.
Yeah, of course.
When I started to kind of look back at all of the things and like kind of go, well, okay, that was, you know, because I think I messaged you straight after going, it's amazing, like you did this, and I got this email and everything like that.
That's wonderful. I was so excited.
Yeah. But then it kind of just took a turn where it went into a different thing, because even in the course of having the conversation where I'm talking about my work or wanting to talk about my work, because a comment had been made that just kind of alluded to who they thought I was going to be, levels of unworthiness that I didn't even realize that I was carrying, affected the whole situation, and it affected the way that I came through. And whether or not that had to do with whether I would have got the work or not, to be honest, I don't think so, because this is someone who was looking for someone to do work for very cheap. But it affected the way that I showed up at that. And, you know, I just remember, if I think about how I handled that situation, being very apologetic about just being there, you know, and just trying to really just grab myself together on the whole thing, and just seeing that not being worthy, not feeling worthy in the midst of whatever gets thrown at me is to do with abundance in itself. So that was one of the things that happened like super quick, really, on that level. And then we've since then had a longer session where so many things came in, and it's been interesting in terms of me just kind of like observing what has happened or what is happening within myself, and how I'm starting to stand in my worthiness as a result of that. Because one, since that first incident, I've actually met somebody who is actually recognizes my worth and is happy to speak to me on a level of, this is what you're worth, this is what I want you to do. It's somebody who comes from a point of they're running a business, they're being serious, and they want someone serious to work with them and represent them in the world. So, you know, had I have just kind of grabbed the first thing, I maybe would have not felt worthy to then speak to somebody on a different level. Because, you know, once I got myself out of that first loop, it was like, hang on a minute, I've been doing this for way too many years, you know, and I've taught myself real skills, and I'm constantly teaching myself real skills, and these are valuable skills, and they're going to become more valuable because more and more people are going to need to be online. It's not even a want, it's going to need to be online, because that's going to be the method of people kind of communicating as everybody becomes a business owner in their own right, or as more people become a business owner in their own right. And little things have come up. There was one thing that you'd said about reconfiguring of DNA.
Yeah.
And
how's that been going?
I don't know if I'm feeling it, but something popped up that you'll really like, actually. And I don't know if I was on a call with somebody, but I saw that an email came in on my phone, and I kind of just noticed it. But the thing that stuck out to me was there was a triple number, 222. And usually I just kind of see triple numbers and go, oh, triple number, you know, and just kind of like bask in the triple numberness of it all. But with regards to this, it was like, you must look that one up. You know, it was more that, oh, make sure you just look that one up. And I didn't really think too much of that one. So I looked it up, and I go to Sacred Scribes. I think that's where most people go online. It just made me look into the number a little bit more. It was like my name, Carol, is a double 2. So I'm familiar with like the master number for Carol. Mm-hmm. But then what really solidified it is later I was on Instagram and I saw a post where it spoke about 222. And it was, I'm trying to find it because I screenshotted it, but what really stuck with me was the fact that it had said, seeing triple digits such as 111, 222, etc., is a sign from your higher self that a new DNA is being activated. Mm-hmm. This means you're entering into an upgraded phase of consciousness expansion with new spiritual insights. These numbers have special, unique messages and blessings. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to remind, to bring to your attention as well.
I love that. And the other thing that when we were doing our longer session together, you know, we were working on these different deep-rooted beliefs that really have we all have them, right? We all have these really deeply rooted beliefs from childhood. We pick them up from modeling from our parents, or we pick them up from people directly saying things to us or showing us how the world works. Mm-hmm. And when we clear these things, when we use different spiritual techniques and different channeled healing to do this kind of work, it really does change our DNA at the cellular level. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is, if you're doing a lot of healing work, just for everyone who might be listening, if you're doing a lot of healing and you're starting to feel things within your body and feel things start to change and shift, it's really important that you just drink a lot of water and try to eat as many healthy vegetables as you can to try to help that detoxification process along. Try to clear out both physically and spiritually all that has been clogging you up, all that is not helping you clear those beliefs and change your DNA and change your whole belief patterning system into something that really does help you and really does help you bring in that abundance. And the other thing I just wanted to say about number 222 is that I started looking it up as soon as you said 222, because I also saw that number today.
Okay.
And on the site that I have used often, which is about numerology, it's about your angel guides. Your angel guides are trying to reach you. And it's also about new beginnings and new experiences, which is so where you are right now. It's beautiful.
Well, it's totally where I am as well. And I've just been noting numbers all over the place as well. And in terms of numerology, this is a 1 year for me as well. So that really makes sense because, one, not only that the fact that this is a 1 year, but more so that last year was a 9 year, because never before
endings.
It was just a constant. It was just constant endings, and to the point where it started to get really disorientating. It's like, my God, is nothing stable anymore? And you know, when you're going through it at the time, it's like, this is horrendous. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. But then actually, it isn't at all, because it's actually. It's an ending of something that is not working. And there was someone who, I wrote it down last night, it's like, you're never in trouble, you're just in transition.
Right.
A quote from somebody else. I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I'd knew that.
That's beautiful. Who said that?
His name is Calvin Whittick.
Oh, I
Calvin Whittick. Calvin Whittick. And I've never heard of him before, and his name was mentioned from someone else that I was watching, who I was just watching now, actually. She was doing something on Zadkiel. So I'm trying to get to know my angels, you know. And
awesome.
So he is, she calls her name is Valerie Love, and she's a really exuberant woman, and she calls herself a Christian witch, and she is like the fun auntie that I always wanted to have.
Okay.
I just really connect with her because, you know, the way that she lays it on, and she talks universal truth in a really real way, and she gets away with being so real because she is so jovial about her delivery. But she tells it like it is, you know, and she's had videos on YouTube for years, and to be honest, I only really caught into her wave maybe a year or so ago, and I dip in and out of her stuff as we all do with different people. But I just caught something of hers yesterday that wasn't really about anything really. It was just her kind of laying out the year, but she mentioned this guy's name. I'm like, okay, Google, I've never heard of him. And I was just watching one of his videos. I think he was talking about like this year or January, doing his like energetic reading for January, and that quote came from him.
Oh, I love that quote. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And I'm like, why didn't I know this last year? I would have tattooed it on my
Me too. The year I was lying in bed, like, what is happening? Why am I not able to walk?
Yeah.
It was just a transition.
Yeah.
And your transition is going so beautifully now.
It feels like it. Yeah.
Work is happening. It's great.
Yeah. And also because I notice feeling, because I'm so open, you know, you don't realize how stressed you are until you take the stress off, really. That I'm just meeting the right people or having the right conversations, even if in the instant the conversation doesn't feel like it's right or good. You know, when it kind of like digs out a very dark
layer,
knotty corner or something that you didn't even realize was an issue, and then it kind of spins you out for a little bit, and then you come back in and you're like, oh, okay. Then you can take a breath and look at that, and then, you know, just it's just nice the way it's opening up. And I know there's so much more, which is why I feel that I just need to remain here for a little bit longer and do much more work in terms of the things that I'm building and work on myself. And then maybe I'll be ready to kind of step back into Western life. Who knows? I mean, you spent so much time out here as well. You can talk about how you found this part of the world.
Oh, it's incredible. So when I first moved to Timor-Leste, I lived in this crazy house with 6 women. Hi guys. Hi Timor family. And my, at the time, boss also lived with us. And he later became a very close friend, and we're still friends. But it was definitely a strange time in my life. We'll put it that way. And I just found that Timor-Leste was so naturally beautiful. I still think to this day it's the most naturally beautiful place I've ever been. It's very untouched. You know, people like to go to Bali. Bali is the destination, and it's so beautiful. It's gotten even more popular, I feel like, in the last 5 years. But when I was first working in Timor-Leste, the political situation was, there was unrest. Let's put it that way. And so we were taking rest and relaxation every 6 weeks away from Timor-Leste in order to have stamina and be able to keep going and kind of be able to recover from some of the trauma that was happening there. And so the closest place to do this was Bali. So I was able to go to Bali every 6 weeks for a while, which was incredible because, as I'm sure you can imagine, working with survivors of violence every day becomes overwhelming. I'm sure it's 1,000 million times more overwhelming for them to live in this way. But it was also overwhelming for us. So we ended up getting to spend a lot of time in Bali, and I found it to be just the most healing place. We spent a lot of time in Ubud. That was my favorite part of Bali, but I also got to travel everywhere in Bali. I just loved it. It was great. And may I also just say, for anyone who would like to go visit Timor-Leste, it is very calm and peaceful right now. They have the most incredible diving in the entire world. People talk about the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. It's got nothing on diving in Timor-Leste. And they would love to welcome tourists, from what I understand. So Just putting that out there. You're very close by. It's a short flight.
No, I realize. Yeah, I realize that it's got to be somewhere that I visit because it is so close. And already with being in Bali, I've kind of gone for drives in like different nooks and crannies, and there's so much more to see than there is just. I mean, Ubud in itself is. It's just a different energy. I mean, I felt the energy of Bali the minute I stepped off the plane, to be honest. Yeah. I just like the travel had been so long anyway, because I just kind of taken like a majorly long way round, it feels. But it was just stepping off the plane and just feeling, one, because it's warm and I just operate better in a warm environment as opposed to a cold one. It took me like a couple of days to kind of get untired and just start to walk around and start to look around, and it is amazing because there's just temples and offerings everywhere, and the temperament of the people is genuinely lovely.
I agree. So beautiful. It's such a gift to be there.
And I'm glad I just followed my I've got to get out of London. Like the feeling where I'm just like, this is just not going to happen anymore. I think when I looked at it, if I think back on it, the period of time leading up to me coming here, I'd kind of promised myself that the year before Christmas, I'm like, I'm not having another Christmas here, cold, miserable. I just can't be doing it. I don't want to pretend that I'm ho, ho, ho. It's not that I'm against it. I just wasn't in the whole swing of it. I didn't want to get swept up in the wheel. I just wasn't there. And I didn't want to just go out and get drunk and forget about it, because I'd wake up the next morning just with a headache and still not dealing with the things that I needed to deal with. So, and even halfway through the year, it didn't even look like I'd be able to do it because everything was falling to bits. Like, literally everything was falling to bits. And then come September, October, like everything just came together for just enough time. And then I'm like, I'm just going to pack everything up and go, because I did it, and it just, no regrets. not wrong.
That's how it came to me as well. Like, there was just a moment of time where I felt like I could not take New York anymore. It was freezing. It was winter. I was so sick of my job at that time. It just felt all wrong. And I just couldn't wait to get out of here.
Yeah.
And once I got to Southeast Asia, I felt 100% better. I was like, oh, all right. So that was not like a massive hideous depression. I just needed to be in a different environment. And I think so much of that is about following our soul's calling. If your soul is calling you to do something different in a different place, even if it looks the same from the outside, like, okay, you are a web savant, so much about creating visual identities and logos and creating web design. And you may have done that in London, and you may be doing that now in Bali as well. But sometimes even just the change of place can have such an impact on our soul and on our spirit and on the things that we're bringing forward. I mean, this incident that you were referring to with the very triggering event that happened in the cafe with the woman who did not recognize your worth because she didn't recognize her own worth. Obviously, that was her issue. That might not have happened if you'd stayed in London. And then that would be a whole layer of healing undone, So sometimes I feel like spirit just leads us to a different location so that we can achieve a new layer of healing, to provide different circumstances for us to kind of tap into those things, for us to have the time and the energy to tap into those things.
I'd agree with that, like 101%. The time, the energy, the space. I promised myself that when I came here, I'd do the touristy things, but it was about work. It was about work on myself, but it was also about all the ideas and all the things that I've been trying to fit into all the other stuff that I'd been doing to survive in the city. That if I had all the space and the time to do it, then I would get it done, as opposed to just kind of sitting here and luxuriating. It's given me, the space has given me a sense of urgency, but in a very calm way, if that makes sense. It's been like, okay, we get up, we do work. And I've done so much stuff and had so many more insights, and I put in like 8 to 10 hour days sometimes here. So I'm working just as much, if not more, because it's kind of more focused on me, as opposed to kind of going and helping someone else build their business and then going home and trying to squeeze in another 3 or 4 hours for myself each day. And just there's been so many different moments that I can notice in the day. I can be walking down the street and just turn around and see the architecture that's here. And
it's so beautiful. And
just looking around and going, this is how they live. You know, this is, you go around the back and like their homestays and just the intricacy and the carvings that are on every little piece. It's just, or the way that the nature grows and the way that the flowers look and the butterflies that I see all the time. Butterflies have a real resonance with me as well. So, and even the other day when I was down by the sea and just standing in front of the sea, and just, it was a really kind of windy day, and just standing there and just allowing the wind to really just come and like blow through my hair and blow around me. And I was just aware, one, of the vastness of the potential of the power that I have and everyone has. And then also how it's not something that has just turned up because I've been in Bali. It's just something that I just didn't allow to be seen for one reason or another. I'd use that power inversely and kind of folding it. I think I was explaining to a friend in a message and saying it's like taking this vast energy, and in order to kind of suppress your energy, you have to be super powerful. If your energy is vast and then you're trying to minimize your energy, all of that energy down into like a matchbox, you have to use your energy to kind of push down. And it takes a lot to kind of keep it down. So you're kind of using it down and against yourself. And if you just flip it out and turn it out the other way, then who knows, you know? And that's the feeling that I'm feeling about myself, is like a real kind of like, who knows? There's room for me to have this kind of who knows feeling about anything that I can do, which is why I can be like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. And it doesn't feel like it's impossible. It's a lot of work, but as long as I am structured and just put my energy into it, and at some point, if I need to, delegate as well, because that's always a hard one, you know? But it's just seeing that when you're in a city sometimes like that, everyone's having to really compress themselves, and I can understand the stress. I really get it.
And I also believe that a lot of that compressing themselves and that stress is what leads us to autoimmune conditions. So a lot of the clients that I work with come to me with autoimmune because it is a specialty of mine, that and fertility, in terms of the physical part, using Native American herbs. But I do also believe that a lot of that is rooted in childhood trauma too. So we kind of do a blend of all of those things. But when you're living in a big city like New York or London, your nervous system is just kind of a mess. You know, we're packed into these tight situations with people, and even just taking the tube or the subway, you're pressed up against people that you don't even know.
Yep.
And, you know, medical science has shown us that our fight or flight cortisol stress hormone gets triggered every time we come within closer than 5 feet of a stranger. So you're having that response at least twice a day, you know? It ends up usually leading to adrenal fatigue. And then once your adrenals tank and you're not able to get them back into regulation, then usually there's some kind of thyroid thing that happens next, and it becomes a cascade. So a really important thing I think we all need to remember if we're living in big cities and pressing up against people on the subway, which is unavoidable, is to just really take care of our stress levels. And this is where meditation comes in so handy. You know, if you can meditate while you're on the subway or the tube or if you're in other packed situations, close and tight elevators or whatever the case may be, you can kind of dampen that cortisol stress hormone response.
Yeah.
It's so helpful.
So important. Yeah, it's just thinking about it now at the moment, it's like when I go back, I'm just going to go back with a completely different view on how to live in the city. And I don't want it to be like a survival, because it started to be survival after a while. And I feel that a lot of people just kind of flip into survival mode because they feel they have to.
What else can you do?
Yeah. There's so much coming at you with, like you say, when you're on the tube. And, I remember when I used to do a commute and get on the tube, and you kind of get on the tube, you've got about a foot square to stand in, and then you're kind of pressed up, and like if you're by the door, you're kind of bent over at an angle, and people are breathing and everyone's angry. And that's AM in the morning before you've even started your day. So it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and I know for most people, it doesn't. Going off to Bali for a few months isn't something that is possible to do. It's just working out a way of finding your Bali within your day. Your life, and meditation is a really good one. And people like you who provide like real healing services, so that we can start to unpick where a lot of the stuff is coming from, and work out ways of how to operate successfully within the world is vital for our survival. Otherwise, it's just going to get more and more agitated. And I was feeling it within myself. I was just becoming more and more agitated for no reason whatsoever, other than just trying to get from A to B was an agitation, and that's something we all have to do if we're trying to get on with our lives.
Right. Spirit is sending me an activation for us to do together, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Just in the course of this conversation, I've been seeing this activation for people who live in big cities, or even if you don't live in a big city, even if you live in Bali, there will be moments in your day when you're going to feel stressed out, or something happens and you start to feel that stress or that panic response. So let's just do this together. Come sitting and place your feet firmly on the floor. And take some deep breaths here. Let your breath come up from your pelvis. And slowly breathing in and out, taking as much breath in as you can, and exhaling in equal part. And then feel the earth's energy coming up through your feet, and through your legs, and up through the trunk part of your body, and all the way up to your head. And now visualize a gold dome surrounding your body. It stretches from the front of your forehead all the way down around your feet, and all the way around your back up to the top of your head. And now picture white sprinkles of light fanning out from this gold dome on all sides of you, bursting out from your head and from your neck, from your arms, the trunk of your body, from your legs and your feet. And now picture these white sprays of light becoming larger and larger, so that they fold 5 feet out in front of you, to both sides of you, and in back of you. And now bring the earth's healing energy up through your feet again, moving it up through your legs, Moving it through particularly any parts of your body that might be in pain right now, any joints that might be hurting, any nerves that are giving you trouble. Bring that earth's healing energy through those spaces. And feel it rising up through your body. All the way up to the top of your head again. And then take a deep breath in, breathing in through the pelvis again. An equal breath out. And a deep breath in again. And a deep breath out. And when you're feeling grounded and back into your body, you can slowly open your eyes.
Thank you.
Of course. And that was channeled through Mary Magdalene as something that we can all use in moments of stress during our day. Thank you very much, Mary Magdalene.
Thank you for that. And I just want to sit and bask in just feeling good, but I need to continue with what I'm doing. I'll do that later.
Okay.
Let's chill and just bask in. That was really beautiful, and as well, you're saying bringing in Mary Magdalene. It's like a new. I know other friends of mine who work with or mention Mary Magdalene a lot as well. So this is a new energy for me to kind of discover and work with. So I'm learning this as well. So it's more for me. And I also mentioned it to a friend of mine as well. You know, I had this session and she said mention Mary Magdalene, especially because she's a creative as well. And both of us are really, really diving into doing, creating like major shifts in our lives in terms of the work that we're putting out, but we've kind of like stacked up like a major amount of workload for each other, within us, but we know that we have to get through it, and we just kind of email and like I'm keeping her up to date with what's happening and stuff. But I was saying to her, it was suggested to me to kind of call on Mary Magdalene, especially when it comes to me wanting to write and content for all of the things that I'm doing as well. So this is a new opening for me. Everything here has been new. I can recommend Bali by no means, that for anyone who's kind of picking a space to take some time out, it's just get here. Once you're here, you can do it on so many levels. You can do it on a real inexpensive level as well if you need to. If you want to do it on a budget, it's totally possible. It's just being here. And even if you don't kind of get involved in any of the yoga classes or any of the other spiritual stuff that's happening, and there is a real community of that, just kind of being in the environment, it'll hit you. Mm-hmm. Well, it won't hit you. It'll just kind of, it'll infuse.
It envelops.
That's it. Yeah. Because nothing about Bali is hitting. It's not that kind of place at all. So
very true.
Let me ask these questions of you. So the first one is, what is the best piece of advice a woman has ever given to you?
Never give up. My mom has said it to me many, many times in my life. And we all reach points where we're ready to give up and just say, okay, well, whatever. I mean, I guess I'm just going to go find a job in a restaurant or, move back in with my parents. Like there are always moments of nearly giving up. I think everyone has those, but my mom has been an amazing inspiration for me. Aside from the early childhood born again Christian thing that we went through together. She's still to this day one of the most inspirational people I think I've ever met. And she really never gave up. She left her job when she was in her 50s and she went back to school and got her graduate degree and began teaching in a small school in upstate New York. And, now she's transitioned into being a choir director. She just really does whatever spirit leads her to do. And I think that's so beautiful. And she never gives up when things are not working out. She's like, okay, I guess it's just time to transition again. And she does it and doesn't put up much of a fanfare about it. So that's been an amazing piece of advice.
Beautiful. And such an inspiration to have someone in your family who just kind of keeps tracking on, and like you say, not making too much of a fanfare about it. You learn so much by watching as well as what people tell you. Like, it's a double-edged sword, but sometimes it's the ones that don't say much are the ones that have the biggest impact on us. The quiet one that no one really champions until they actually take a moment and go, actually, hang on a minute, they never gave up. But yeah, I'm a great proponent of that, just because I'm stubborn. I'm going to see this through. It's like either it's going to happen or you're just going to find all my notebooks when I'm gone. One or the other. Not giving up.
I'm sure you have beautiful notebooks. I remember when Mary Magdalene came through for you in our session. So I'm hoping there's been some Mary Magdalene writing going on in those notebooks.
Lots of, I mean, this was a really hard thing for me to do, because obviously I was restricted by weight when I was coming out here. And there were a few physical books that I wanted to bring because I wanted to really read them and really study them. And I'm usually a person that has a notebook for everything. So, there'll be a notebook that I'll have that is just for contacting like her conversation guests and making notes about them. And then there'll be a notebook that's the one for all my website work. And then there'll be a notebook that's my diary. And then there'll be a spare one that I just need in case I just need a new notebook. And I had to limit myself down to my journal and another notebook. And it was hard. It was hard for me to do, because I've realised I've barely got any clothes, or the ones that I did bring, like I didn't really account for the humidity, so the fabric's not really working. So
you just need cotton long dresses. That's it.
Yeah, and so I've and then I carried a load of technology stuff with me as well, like mics and keyboards and everything. So I was limited to the amount of, so 2 books I've had, and I've kind of work it by writing from the front in one and writing from the back in the other. And
you're making it work. But Bali does have great stationery shops.
I will start to take them out. Yeah. But I've got to think of my weight all the time, or I'll just have to start paying the excess when I travel as well. But that's not anytime soon.
Well, you're bringing in all of this abundance right now. I don't think it's going to be a problem.
This is cool. Yeah. I'm all for more notebooks. Absolutely. Can never have too many. And there's a storage unit in North London that's got some beautiful notebooks in there. Let me tell you.
Nice.
Yeah, but we'll get back to each other very soon. That's no problem. Another question. So what woman would you say represents higher energetic resonance to you?
I think all women do. I mean, that's our resonance. I think all women represent higher energetic resonance. And I think that we're most in it when we're most ourselves. So just listening to that part of you again. The story I was telling about how I came to become a healer and to sort of come into my own and start my own healing practice. There were those signs along the way that I was not in my higher energetic resonance. I still had it in me. I think we always have it in us as women. Sure. It's always there. We're just sometimes squashing it down so that we can do what's expected of us by society or parents or relationships, whatever the case may be. So I think all women are her.
Beautiful. I agree. And what is your favorite self-care ritual or practice?
Going to a Kundalini yoga class. It is my absolute favorite. I recently started teaching at Rama in New York City, and I'm so, so happy to be there. And I still love taking class there. I was trained at Golden Bridge, which closed this past year, and it was hard on all of us. I think we all started trying out different yoga places, but I really have enjoyed my classes at Rama. And I also enjoy classes at Kundalini Yoga East. And I try to make it a priority to go to class at least twice a week. And then I have my own spiritual practice in the mornings. Also, I spend about an hour doing channeled writing. Those are my favorite times. Best self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about Kundalini yoga as well, as I say, I had the privilege of being asked to kind of recommend just a few meditations to someone, and they were just so into it. Like one of the first things that she did actually, and she took it on. It was like a practice that was 11 minutes of breath of fire, which for a complete which for a complete newbie, I was like, this is a really good one, but it's like 11 minutes. And sometimes when you say 11 minutes to someone who doesn't meditate, it's like, how long?
Yeah.
So, until you start doing 31 and 62, then it's like 11 minutes.
It's like whatever. Yeah. That's so easy. Come on.
But this was like an 11 minutes one, and you were doing breath of fire, and she's like, oh, let's give it a go. And I'm like, okay. And she stuck with it all the way through. And then at the end of it, she was just like, oh my God, like looking around. I remember the first time I did a little bit of Kundalini at home from the laptop. And I had that same, that time when you have your first like Kundalini class or Kundalini experience, and you start looking around going, what happened? And she's just like, oh my God. Yeah, so it was, and that has like inspired me more to want to do the teacher training for sure.
Oh, I think you should definitely do it. It's the most incredible experience. Changed my life forever. And you make friends that you will have for a lifetime. Like there is no bonding quite like that.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to have to be later on in the year, as I've kind of like promised myself that I'll finish these books. So I better just get them done. And also Hair Life Academy. So I just need to spend the kind of the top end of the year focusing on that, but definitely want to do it. And already like within the Kundalini community, I've got some like hard and fast like ride or die sisters already in the couple of years I've been doing it with, the Immense Grace program. And so it's an absolute gonna happen. And that's, I can't wait to go deeper into it and then be able to feel confident to pass on the knowledge, because it's great stuff, man. Yeah, and the first thing I said to her is like, I don't want to kind of like be boring and say that Kundalini is going to change your life, but it's going to change your life.
It really does. Yeah. Never do I meet a person who's like, oh, that was just kind of crap.
No,
like nobody ever says that, because it is so life altering from the very beginning.
Even if you just do like a couple of minutes of something, it just gives you a shift in your whole perception of, you're like, what, you just didn't realize that what you were without until you started to get into it. So it's another thing that I'm adding to my arsenal once I've got my other bits up and running.
Good for you.
Yeah. And so what's next for you? Tell everyone what you're up to and what you're doing.
I'm up to a lot. So at the moment, I am in the process of starting up a women's healthcare supplement using Native American herbs.
Oh, wow.
And my business partner and I are on track to hopefully have that out by the end of 2019. Fingers crossed. And I am also continuing to have healing sessions, and I do healing sessions over Skype or Zoom. So you can be anywhere in the world and connect with me for a healing session. And I use channeled healing and messages from spirit, as well as tones and Gong. I think we spoke about this already, but many different modalities and Native American herbs as well. And even if you are in a different country, I have several clients in Europe. Even if you're in another country, I will always recommend herbs that you can find there, so it won't be a problem if they are indicated, if spirit tells me those are the things that your body is calling for. And the other thing that I'm going to be starting up at probably the end of February or beginning of March is sort of an online group package of connecting to your spirit guides. And we'll go through step by step how to tap into your own spiritual gifts, because they're different for everyone. And I really think that so much of our society has kind of divorced us from our spiritual gifts. We're in this go, go, go mode. where we can't stop for a second and we can't pause and really be with ourselves and be with our own inner soul essence. So I'm excited about that as well. And I'll be posting things about that soon on my Instagram.
Perfect. And talking about Instagram and all online stuff, can you just let everyone know where we can find you? You can probably, I don't know if you heard that. Did you hear
I heard the rooster. I love it. That's my favorite sound in the world.
I've kind of got, I'll let you tell your stuff in a moment, but I've kind of got used to, like, they've got a call, because usually they go croak, 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 when everything's cool. If it's about to rain, they just do croak, croak, and they don't do the end bit. And the first time I heard that, I'm like, well, aren't you supposed to do the end bit? And then it rained really heavily. And a few times when I hear them where they don't do the end bit, the rain comes after. So I kind of understand the roosters now.
That's awesome. See, they're communicating so well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah. Anyway, back to you before we were rudely interrupted by nature.
Oh, I loved it. I love being interrupted by nature.
I know, it's like all over, but it's so funny. And I'm used to, like, geckos running around the walls and everything. Like, we're all together now.
Good.
Well, if you've got a problem with it, then you just have to leave, because it's part of what happens, you know.
Very true.
Yeah.
You can't escape the geckos. You'll find them in all of your cereal boxes.
They're cool. And I saw a baby one the other day, and it was almost paper thin. It was like so flat.
Oh, cutie.
Yeah, you almost want to stroke it, but it's a bit too scared. You just run off. Yeah. But anyway, back to you. Where are you online? If you want to find out more about Adalina's work, you can go to her website, which is www.adalinaeast.com. You can find her on Facebook, which is facebook.com/Adalina East Healing. And you can find her on Instagram at Adalina East. Adalina is spelt Adalina. And just to wrap up, just want to say thank you for, 1, being on her conversations, 2, sending me a DM anyway on Instagram. And that's how we, like, struck up our conversation and everything like that. And just you giving me some tips, and just really grateful for the connection. And it's not over, for sure.
Me too. I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much, Carol. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you to Adalina for joining me on this episode of Her Conversations, and thank you for listening. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, which is carolmaywhittick.com. That's carolmaywhittick.com. And I want to tell you also about Her Life Academy, which is a monthly instruction and inspiration platform for the awakening woman. This is created for you to magnify your spirituality, sensuality and soul, and living higher energetic resonance. This all launches in February 2019, and you can visit my website for more details and to sign up to gain early bird access and offers. On social media, you can find me on Facebook under Carol May Whittick, and my Instagram name is Kazmic. That's CAZMICK, and Her Life Academy has her own Instagram, which is at Her Life Academy. I would also appreciate you leaving a comment, liking and sharing any episodes, and if you subscribe, you'll be notified as soon as an episode is published. So thank you again, and enjoy your week, and see you on the next episode. Bye.